All right, we will begin. If anyone joins, they'll be a little bit late, and that's all right. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone who is in this call today, anyone who's here to listen to the talk that we're going to have. It's going to be a conversation. Basically, the topic is Walk in My Cleats, a conversation about Black lives in sport. Thank you to the participants who's coming out today to actually share your stories and just have a conversation talking about this. Today's conversation, just to make everyone aware, today's conversation will be awkward. It will be awkward. At times it will be uncomfortable and sometimes raw, but it is needed. It is needed, especially with what's going on around the world today. It is needed for us to get over this hump and for us to start making everyone more aware of what's happening. We are here today because Suburban FC, the club that I work with, I am a Black coach and I work here, and I believe that it's something that in our society today, it's something that I need to be able to raise awareness to. And I was lucky enough to have a few athletes who were able to join me in that. And with that, I will start by introducing you to them, and I'll even let them say something about themselves. Just so everyone knows, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically allow them to unmute themselves. That means all of you guys will be able to unmute yourselves as well. Please try to keep yourself muted just to avoid any background noises. And whenever it's your time to speak, AJ, Jamar, Kwame, I haven't seen Nana, but whenever it's your time to speak, then you will go ahead and do so. Okay, so first of all, we have Jamar. Jamar, I could allow you to unmute yourself, please. Just introduce yourself to everyone.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jessie. I appreciate what you're doing here, and it's great that you're doing something different from other clubs. So no, I appreciate what you're doing. For everyone, I hope all is well. Yeah, so a little bit about me. My name is Jamar Dixon. I grew up in Ottawa, Ontario. I'm a professional soccer player. I attended St. Francis Xavier University. Then from there, I later moved on to Europe, where I played a few seasons in Sweden, as well as a few seasons in Finland. After that, I had an opportunity to play for the Canadian national team. Great experience. And from there, I actually started to play football in North America. I came back to Ottawa. I played with the Ottawa Fury for a little bit. And now I'm currently playing with Pacific FC in the CPL. So that's my intro. Nice to meet everybody.
All right. Thanks, Jamar. Andrew, AJ, would you be able to introduce yourself to everyone, let everyone know a little bit more about you?
Hi, my name is Andrew Gray. Jessie, thank you very much, and Suburban FC. Thank you very much for having me on the call. Just a brief history about myself and my playing experience. So I recently just stopped playing soccer. I've been playing since the age of 5, similar to many kids on the call. So I grew up playing in Mississauga, Ontario, which is part of the GTA. I played for North Mississauga, I played for Dixie as well. And then from there, I progressed on to the provincial team, the provincial system. And then from there, I was able to progress onto into the national team, the national system as well. I signed my first professional contract at 18 years old with Toronto FC. And then I went to college. I also attended St. Francis Xavier University. And I accompanied Jamar going over to Sweden and to Europe and Finland as well. Yeah, and then pretty much came back to North America and finished out my career here. I played with Phoenix in Orange County as well. And I got to play with some of the greatest players that have played the game, some idols that I grew up playing with, which was quite an experience. And that's a bit of my story in a nutshell. So thank you once again for having me on the call, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you, AJ. Nana, do you mind telling us a little bit more about you? Welcome, Nana.
Yeah. Yeah, first of all, thank you guys for having me. Sorry for the delay. I was having some issues with the link. But yeah, like Jessie said, I'm Nana Attakora. I'm from the GTA. I actually grew up in Brampton. I grew up playing for Brampton Youth Soccer Club before moving to North Miss, where I actually played with Andrew. I signed my first professional contract at 17 with Toronto FC. Played there 5 years. Then I moved over to the States, where I played for San Jose Earthquakes, DC United, a few other teams. Right now, I'm actually in Oakland, California with the Oakland Roots. And yeah, I've had a long career, a very interesting career. I'm very excited to be able to share some of my stories, especially with what's going on in the world right now and being a Black man in the States experiencing it. So thank you, Jessie. Thank you, the club, for putting this together, and I look forward to it.
Thank you, Nana. And last but not least, Kwame, just let us know a little bit more about you.
Hey, thanks, Jessie. Thank you for inviting me to this. I really appreciate the opportunity just to join in discussion about what's going on in the world. And I think this is very important for us to discuss it and not pretend like it doesn't exist. My name's Kwame Osei, by the way, as Jessie just said. I don't play the football that you guys play, but I play the other football, American football. I went to St. Francis Xavier University. Actually, I'm originally from Ghana, West Africa. Came to Canada at the age of 4 and was raised in Rail. And went to St. Francis Xavier University with these three, with Jessie, Jamar, and AJ. And after St. Francis Xavier, I played briefly with the Toronto Argonauts. And then after that, I went to Fort McMurray, Alberta to teach at a high school and coach football and also coach for the provincial team there. And now I'm currently a receiver coach for the Queen's University Gales.
All right. Thank you, Kwame. So the way this conversation is going to work, we're just going to have an open conversation with the participants. I'm going to drive it with a few questions. For anyone who wants to ask any questions throughout all of this, feel free to do so. The questions will only come to me in case you are maybe shy to ask some questions. I want you guys to be open, honest, however you want to ask the question. Please don't be afraid to do so. I'll read the question. I won't say who it's from, but anytime you get a question based on whatever is being said, feel free to ask that question. All right, so the way I'm going to start is I'm going to ask every participant just to chime in on whatever you want to answer based on the question. First question I have for you guys today is, what are some things, lessons or phrases that your parents said to you at a young age that only when you got older you realized that it had racial connotations? I'll let whoever wants to answer start.
Okay. I'll start it off. So one of the things my parents always used to tell me is, Jamar, you have to be careful when you're going to the store, for example, with your friends, because you're gonna constantly be watched. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. Like, I'll be fine. I'm just going to the store just like everyone else, just to get a chocolate bar or something like that. And they would constantly preach it to me. And another thing that they would always say to me is, Jamar, in your lifetime, you're gonna have to work 5 times as hard as the next person. And I always just say, well, who's the next person? Like, what does that mean? Because I never really understood it. And as I started to get a little bit older, I started to see a lot of these examples pop up. And I remember a time just simply going into the store, just Shoppers Drug Mart, across the street from my house. I was with a couple of my friends. And I remember just being stopped by the security that was there for no reason at all. I was actually the first person to pay for my chocolate bar. And my other 2 friends didn't buy anything. They didn't steal anything. They didn't do anything wrong. But we were still questioned because we were in the store, and I had no idea what was wrong, and it bothered me. And I was actually very nervous. That was the first time that something like this has happened. And that was in elementary school. I think I was in grade 6, and that stuck with me. And another example, was when I asked my parents, why do I have to be better than the next person? Like, we're all equal. And my parents told me, no, that's not the case. We're not all equal. And I was like, okay, well, explain. And my parents are from the Caribbean. Dad's from Jamaica, my mom's from Barbados. And, you know, them coming over here from Black countries and coming into a supposed to be multicultural, well, is multicultural country, and having to tell me these lessons and them going through the same situations at a young age. I just didn't think it was still happening to this day. So, you know, they used to tell me, you know, the white kids that are in your classroom, yes, they're your friends. You look at them the same as you, but they have an advantage over you. And I never understood it. I always said, no, that's not true. I don't believe that. And all the time I would come back to my parents, upset or frustrated with different situations or circumstances that have happened to me, that I've experienced in my life. And then I finally started to realize that there's definitely a privilege that that the white kids had over me growing up. And those are just two simple examples. And that's just what I've experienced at an early age. So I'll start off with that.
Yeah, I'll give two examples as well. Piggybacking off what Jamar just said, I too had parents who always told me, you know, growing up, you're gonna have to work 5 times as hard just to get the same success as a white person. And I'm gonna speak as a soccer player. Like I said, I've been a pro for many years now, and this story I'm about to tell is actually very recent, and it's gonna describe the situation perfectly. I played on a club where we had a Black athlete who was a fullback, our right back, and then our left back was a white person. And we had a coach who wanted our fullbacks to practice this one ball into the channel for the wingers. And he had, you know, at the time I never really thought of it, but he had the Black guy do it about 20 to 30 times. The ball was perfect. Every player, every other coach would say the ball was perfect, but he kept, it's not good enough, kept mumbling under his breath, just completely destroying this player and wanted a reaction out of him. Now he moves over to the left side, and this left back, great player, great guy, but a white soccer player, plays the ball similar to the 30 balls the right back had played. And all of a sudden it was a great ball. And in that moment, I remember this was a very multicultural team. Everyone just stopped and was looking around like, what is the difference between what this player has done and what this other player has done? And I never thought of it until I got home and then, you know, really sat down. I'm like, that was a perfect example of what my parents were talking about. A perfect example, right? And, you know, it bothered me a lot. I sat down and had real conversations with, you know, the right back, the Black player about it. And, you know, we sat there and was like, you know what, this isn't the first time we've experienced racism in, you know, this year with this coach, right? But that's one example. Another one, like I said, I've been living in the States, and I've been a grown man since I moved here when I was 21. About 4 years ago, my mom called me. She's very Christian, always praying for me, praying for my friends. She called me. It was about 1 a.m. where I was at. I just got home. I was out, and she had told me, like, Nana, when you drive, make sure you have your license and your registration in an area where if you do get pulled over, you're able to reach it quick. And I've been in the States, I've been seeing what was going on, but it, you know, it will never happen to me. You know, that's the first mentality any Black person said, this will never happen to me. Well, a few weeks later, I got pulled over and I had my license in my back pocket, and I found myself shaking, just, you know, nervous. Like, if I reach, you know, the wrong way, my windows were completely tinted. I'm a Black man. If I reached the wrong way, could I end up like one of the many Black people we've seen on TV, right? So it's just, you know, the reason why I'm here is I want to be able to teach, like, this stuff is real. We deal with this stuff every single day, you know, and it's tough. It's for our mental health. It's not easy. So I just want to be here and be a voice to let you guys know this is not going to be easy. It's going to be uncomfortable, but this is stuff we deal with on a regular basis. So those are two instances that I want to share with you guys.
I'll also do the same thing and share a story as well. And it's funny, it's very interesting because all the stories, the story from Jamar, the story from Nana, I can relate to those stories. So it's this shows you where the problem lies, right? Where the problem is if we're all relating to the same exact thing. So one experience for me that's very clear in my mind and that I can remember is when I was a younger kid, and my mother said the same thing. AJ, you're gonna have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard as the person next to you. I didn't really understand what that meant at the time. Had no idea. I'm just in my mind, I'm just thinking, okay, you know what? I gotta work hard. It's just, that's a part of life. It's what I gotta do in order to move forward, right? So that being said, there was one incident where, very similar to Jamar, I'm in a shopping store looking to buy a piece of clothing. I'm with a friend, and my friend actually, he was white. We're in the store, we're shopping, and I felt like I was being followed, right? I felt like I was being followed around. So I see the person working at the store clerk that was there, following me and looking to see if I'm going to steal anything or if I'm going to buy anything, just following me, very suspicious. So at that moment I questioned, like I looked back at him and said, why are you following me? Looked at me, dead stare in my face, didn't say anything, just walked away. So at that moment for me, I kind of knew and had an understanding of what my parents were speaking about in regards to working harder and being conscious of your skin color and how people are going to perceive you going forward. I've also experienced this in soccer as well. Just knowing, it's hard to explain, kind of being in a position where you know that you're working twice as hard as the other guy, right? You're doing the same thing, if not more than the other guy. But yet you're being ignored in a sense. And I feel like this is something that our culture suffers from and experiences time and time again, similar to what Nana and Jamar said. And it's something that needs to be addressed. And that is why I'm here on the call. I'm here to share my experiences and try to come up with a solution, or have everybody leave after this call with a different perspective of Black people, right? So that's just one experience that I've experienced. So I look forward to sharing more, and yeah.
Thanks, AJ. Kwame, do you have anything?
Same thing with me. I've had numerous occasions of racial discrimination and prejudice, but pertaining to my mother, honestly, my mother, she tried her best to position me in the best place to be successful in life. The reason why I say that is because I was raised in Rexdale, which is an urban area, like many urban areas, high crime rate, lots of drugs and gang violence and whatnot. And so there was 2 schools in my area. There was like a predominantly Black elementary school, and there was a predominantly white elementary school. And my mother and father specifically made sure I went to the predominantly white school. Reason being, and that time I didn't think anything of it, but reason being was that it was gonna align me in the path to be around more white people and less Black people, because being around more Black people means trouble, means being seen in a particular view. So essentially, she was trying to get me to be camouflaged around white people, but that ended up not working, because when I got to high school, I went to the Black high school. But I always remember my mother telling me, if somebody else can do it, so can you. Essentially saying your skin color doesn't mean anything. You know, your skin color, yes, you're Black, but hey, somebody else was able to get a degree. Somebody else was able to be successful. So you need to find a way. And at that time, I didn't take it as that, but over the course of time, when I look back, that's what she was trying to say. I remember in high school, she asked me, how come you don't bring any white friends over? I didn't understand why she was asking me that. In elementary school, if I was invited to a party, my mother would tell me, don't touch anything when you go to that house. Don't touch anything when you go to that house. And the people that were inviting me were Caucasian people. And I never thought anything of it until I started getting more socially aware of what was going on in the world, watching movies and seeing how the Black characters were portrayed. And it got to a point where if I got invited to some party, I wouldn't go. So my relationships in elementary school were very, very superficial. Like I never got deep with many people in elementary school because I didn't want to go to their house. And then something happened or something gets stolen and everybody look at me, you know. Would that have happened? I don't know, but that might have been like the internal exclusion that I kind of gave myself based on society, you know. So my mother tried to protect me and keep me away from that stuff, but at the same time, I think it's things I had to learn on my own too. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thanks, Kwame, for that. It does answer my questions. I think we got a lot of content here. But with all of that being said, it makes me think, have you guys ever experienced racism in your life? Was there a time that you could remember that you actually experienced it? I know you guys got aware of it, you were made aware of it, but have you actually ever experienced racism?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we're all going to say there's no sugarcoating it. I've experienced racism every level of my life. From elementary school, I can remember vividly on the basketball court, I wouldn't give the ball to a Caucasian girl, and she blatantly came out and just said, "You're an N-word." And I'm just like, okay. I mean, I went home. I remember that I actually went home and cried. And my dad at the time, you know, pulled me in and said, "Listen, you're gonna have to. This is the world we live in. You're gonna get called that millions of times. Just be strong, and you know they're the problem, not you." But I'm like a 7, 8-year-old kid. I don't know anything, right? So that stuck with me. And 3, 4 years ago in a soccer game, Jamar knows this. This is no secret. It's known around the soccer world. In the finals of my league, NASL, a player called me the N-word. And I'm not afraid to share that. It's publicly known. It was on TV. But I'm like, I am 28 years old at the time, and this is still going on. You know, like this is 2017 we're talking about. You know, and it's just like, it gets to a point where Black men is like, we have to accept it. We have to deal with that's painful. To be called something so derogatory, it's like, people don't think about what it does to our mental health. Because if we react, we're the problem. We're the aggressors, you know? So it's like, people need to understand it weighs so heavy on our hearts and our minds. Like we have to go home and think about this. Like people don't realize the effect, you know, the mental effect it has on us. They just think, oh, you got called with it, deal with it. It doesn't work like that. We go home and we think about it for months and months, you know, and then we have to wake up and deal with our everyday lives, still having this in the back of our heads, right? So yeah, those are two of my stories.
That reminds me of the story of, if you guys don't know about me, I wasn't born in Canada. I was born in Dominica. I came here at the age 13. So moving here, I grew up in a country of predominantly Black people. I had white friends. White people would come to Dominica, and I'm using the term white people because I want to be just blunt. They would come to Dominica, and I would remember treating them as royalty because I'm like, oh, person from out of town is coming in. Hey, there's a friend. And then I remember when I moved here, it was like culture shock because I mean, all the conversations that all of these guys received, I didn't really get that when I was young because I never had to worry about it because I didn't live in an environment where there was a mixture of cultures, like white people, Black people, Spanish people, all different races. I did not grow up in that. So even coming here, I remember when I first experienced it in school, right away, there was like a fight. I showed up to school on my first day. My mom doesn't even know this, but I showed up on my first day and I got in a fight. There was a fight going on between, and they called it white boys versus immigrants. Instantly. That's what I was welcomed with on my first day, and I didn't know how to react. And a person came up to me and I'm just like, what is going on? And whenever these things happen, it forces you to act out of character. And at that time, I got in a fight. Then I went home and my parents had a talk with me and said, if you ever get in a fight here, they'll deport you back to your country and your sister and your entire family. So that stuck with me. And for me, fighting is something that kind of left me until I got older. And on the field, even growing up playing youth, we played in, I remember that game like it was yesterday. We played in Cape Cod and a player called me an effing N-word. And right away, I acted out of character. And during that moment, the player ended up getting a red card because they heard, the referee heard what happened. But we went back and I had a coach who was an African-American at the time. And he pulled us together and he pulled me and he said, I don't ever want to hear about any confrontation on the field because you are a Black man. And as a Black man, if you get yourself in trouble, you are seen as the bad one. You have to find a different way to deal with it. And I mean, a lot of the times I feel like that is what a lot of Black people are told, find a different way to deal with it. And now you're seeing in the world, there's a lot of protests and all these things going on. So for me to even understand what some people might be going through based on what they've experienced, I can't understand it. And I don't want to judge. And I don't want to say, hey, okay, maybe it's good. Maybe it's that bad or not that bad, because I could only remember my stories. And I remember how I acted so out of character based on what I was called and just the hate that I felt in my direction. So, I mean, I could share that. So definitely I get where you're coming from with that story for sure.
Yeah, Jessie.
Jam,
go ahead.
Go on, Aid. You sure? All right. I'll go. Honestly, both those stories, it's crazy. It's just, it makes me really look at things as a Black man. We all go through these things, and I've never asked you about these stories, Jessie. I've never asked you about these stories, Nana, Kwame, and AJ. But I'm sure it's the exact same things, the exact same scenarios, except now we're in those places. We have the same stories, similar stories. And it makes me think, why is this such a regular thing? This is normal of all aspects. You said you came here at 13 on your first day. You had a fight between the white boys and the immigrants. Like that's what you got introduced to in Canada. And back home when you're in Dominica, I'm sure you were like, wow, I can't wait to go to Canada. It's going to be an amazing adventure. It's a new opportunity with my family. And then you're faced with that on your first day of school. I mean, how does that feel? That's tough. Now, off of that point, actually, I remember one of the worst experiences of racism I faced was definitely at, I think I was about 16 or 17. And I was with two of my friends, a Black guy and a white guy. And this was around maybe 9:30. 9:30 at night, we went to the pizza shop. Not far from our house, maybe a 5-minute walk from our house. And I would say it was December time, November, December. So it was a bit chilly outside. And we were at the pizza shop for about an hour and a half, just joking around, just cracking jokes with each other. The pizza guy knew us because we would always go there for lunch during school hours. So, he was involved joking with us, and it was just a nice vibe. We weren't bothering anyone, just being kids, just being kids. Finally, you have a little money to go and buy some food, and we want to do it together and laugh, and then end up going back to one of each other's homes, playing some video games, and then going home. So when we were finished eating pizza, the three of us were just walking back home, and we were crossing the gas station, and all of a sudden, a police car just drove like right in front of us. Just one police car drove right in front of us, and said, "Where are you guys coming from?" And we're like, "We're just at the pizza shop, officer." No, everyone was calm. We just kind of shocked. We just thought it was just a mistake or something. And the officer was just, the way he was speaking to us was almost like we are guilty of some crime that we've done. And the whole time, all we did was simply walk over and have a slice of pizza and crack jokes. So he kept questioning, and we had all the answers for him, and he kept asking the same questions over again and over again. And it's like they were trying to frustrate us to get a reaction. But I told the guys, like, just relax, like everything's fine. We didn't do anything. It's okay. All of a sudden, another 5 cop cars surround the gas station. So people that were trying to get gas couldn't even get gas. At this point, I was kind of nervous. I'm looking around, I'm seeing the lights flashing on us. And I'm like, why are there 6 cop cars surrounding us? Like, what have we done wrong? We just had pizza. At that time, the cops, all of them came out of their car. Two cops approached myself and my black friend, and they told my white friend that he can go home. And I kid you not, this is a true story. I kid you not. My friend said, no, like, I'm going to stay. I was with them the whole time. The cop said, no, this doesn't involve you, to the white kid. So I said, Ian, go home. Tell your parents what's going on. So now the cops put us against the car, take everything out of our pockets, put them on the hood of their car, where now things are falling into, like, under the hood, basically. So we're losing our items, and they know what they're doing. And I'm like, officer, like, what is the means of this? Like, what are you doing? Like, what have we done? They constantly shut up, just stop talking, just listen to what we're saying to you. You guys fit the description. I said, fit the description of what? There's like, well, there was a robbery up the hill. That was probably 15 minutes from me. And you know what they said? They said, well, you guys are wearing a black jacket with fur on the hood. Now, that's a very common jacket in Canada. Everyone could get a black jacket with fur on the hood, whether you get it from Walmart, whether you get it from Canada Goose, the most expensive places. Everyone has access to a jacket like that. But because we were wearing it, they just racially profiled us. And the worst part is my friend Ian, the white guy, they let him go scot-free without even questioning him, not even searching him, nothing. They found nothing on us. They wouldn't even give us, when I asked I want their badge numbers, everything, they laughed in my face. They didn't even give me back my things. They just threw it on the floor. And at that point, at 16 or 17, I realized now I'm going to approach life completely different, because I'm clearly not on the same level as a white man. So at that point, I said to myself, well, police officers, it was very hard for me to trust a police officer, because for me not doing anything, they just basically, they disrespected me. They degraded me. I could have had friends' parents that were getting gas that are just going to look at me a different way now. They can judge me off of, oh, what did Jamar do now? They could have had the same mindset as these police. So that was a very tough moment in my life. And to that day, I mean, I'll never forget it. And I live by that now. And I'm always cautious of what I'm doing. Every corner, you have to always be aware. You always have to be looking over your shoulder, and it's uncomfortable, but that's the reality of my life. And that's the reality of everyone speaking right now. And that's why we're telling you these things. And some of you guys might not understand how serious this is, but this is a day-to-day occurrence. All the time, there's random situations that happen. So
I just want to add something to what Jamar said real quick, because I know, Jessie, at your club, you have a lot of kids who are 15, 16, 17, young men. And you had said something that in that moment, you never looked at life the same. You were 16 years old. Mm-hmm. One of the comments I hear a lot, especially being in America, and I want to stress, America is not Canada. America has a long way to go. So does every country has a long way to go, but America is special. And one of the comments I've been hearing the last 7-8 years is from friends too, is, well, why are Black men so aggressive or so angry? You know, you guys show no emotion. Well, Jamar was 16 when he experienced this. That scars young men. You know, like, again, I'll go back to the mental health. How can you not be angry or have trust issues or anxiety, worry, depression when you're constantly feeling these type of emotions? And at 16, you don't even know how to communicate your feelings yet, right? Like, there's a lot of young Black men who deal with a lot of things internally. So if you guys have young Black friends, the next time you see them, just ask them, how are you doing? Like, how are you mentally? Like, I had, over the past 2 weeks, I've had, and I kid you not, maybe 40 to 50 phone calls to see how I'm doing mentally. And I told all my white friends, you don't know how much it means that you're calling me just to check up on me. Because finally people are having the uncomfortable conversations. Like, black men specifically go through a lot, you know? So Jamar, I heard you say that, and I just want to point that out there, that just let's be understanding that we Black men deal with a lot at a young age, you know? So if you could be more compassionate, more understanding, that's the key word. Just be understanding, listen, and if you could help us in that sense, especially when you're 16, 15, 14, it'll go a long way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree. And even just little things like this, having the opportunity to share stories. Jamar, I didn't know that story about you.
Yep.
Jessie, I didn't know that story about you, and I've known you guys for many years, right? So just to be at a level now where we can speak about these things and discuss it and share each other's experiences, I think it goes a long way. I had a similar experience in high school that I can remember. It was actually during a soccer game, and we were playing against another high school. I can't remember if it was a finals or just a regular season game. But so we were playing, great game, very competitive game, and I was called the N-word. In the moment, and that was the first time this happened to me, which was in high school, I immediately reacted in rage, in anger, which eventually turned into an altercation. And both players were sent off of the field. And I didn't know at that age what that type of anger felt like. My parents always told me about just going out into the communities and being mindful if someone calls you the N-word, don't react to it. Kind of just, it's just a word. It's not going to really affect you. It's not going to harm you. But mentally, at that age, it affected me, and I acted out of anger. But what really bothered me was the treatment of each player. So I was treated completely different than the guy that called me the N-word, which was a white person. So I remember going to school the next day, going into high school, regular kid, enjoying high school, ready to go to class. I hear my name being called on the PA system. AJ Gray, can you please come down to the office? Okay, like, is there something going on? I don't know, did my mom call? Did she find out I didn't go to first period or something like that? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? So I go downstairs, go to the office. There's 2 police officers in the office. They tell me to come inside the office, sit me down. They're like, look, we understand that there was an altercation yesterday in the game. The parents of the other kid, the other student from the other school, they want to press charges against you for fighting. I'm like, what do you mean? He called me the N-word. Like, I'm not just fighting just to fight. Like, he didn't tackle me or kick me in the wrong way, and I just want to fight him. It was an altercation. I got angry. We started fighting. He was fighting me. I was fighting him. So they're like, they want to press charges. Nothing happened to him. He was fine. Long story short, I ended up getting suspended from school for 2 days. He was fine. So after this incident, I kind of had an understanding of where we were as a race, what to do and what not to do in those situations. As Jessie said earlier, it allows you to act out of character. And it's not something I couldn't, in the moment, I couldn't control it, right? It was something that came out naturally, something that I'd never experienced before, and it just came out. So that made me realize the trauma that our culture suffers these days and in general. And I think there's a lot of mental health issues within our culture and young Black men, especially around that age of 16 and 17, especially kids that experience these things. So growing up, you kind of figure out a way of how to deal with it and how to communicate and how to speak. You kind of, it's like a thing that you shove under the rug, right? But I think now, given the circumstances in our communities and what's happening in the US and the protests and riots, it's coming to light. People are seeing the damage that it's done to our culture. People are seeing the damage that it's done to other people. People from all different races are starting to connect to the emotion. It's different to go on and watch something and not be able to connect to the emotion of how we feel as a culture and how we feel as Black men. So I think people now are being able and opening up themselves to connect to the emotion of how we feel in these circumstances, right? So, yeah.
Kwame, you want anything to add to that?
Yeah, man, I don't even know where to start. With everything that's been going on, like, people have been messaging me also, and I have to kind of remind myself, like, or remind them, like, this is nothing new. But then I'm taken back, and kind of like what Jamar just said, man, like, it's actually sad that we become so desensitized to this, because this is normal to us. You know, it's actually sad we become so desensitized to this, you know, and I'm glad the whole world is seeing it. I'm glad that we're in the era of social media where people have their cameras out, because it's been happening for years and years and years, but just never been recorded. You know, for me, I got too many stories from being labeled a drug dealer based on the way I look, when I'm not even involved in anything like that. But because of the way I look, I've been labeled a drug dealer. But I know we're pressed for time, so I'm just going to tell you one story. This was in my first year at Saint Effects. So Jessie and Jamar before you guys even came, and AJ before you guys even came to Saint Effects. This is a story I haven't really talked about in a public setting, but I feel like, you know, this is a good time to speak about. So I was a friend of mine, a female friend of mine, and her friend. I saw them. I was just walking back from the bar, and I saw them crying, and I was just like, okay, what's going on? And her, one of the ladies said that a gentleman that's further up called her the N-word and was just harassing her. So I decided to approach this gentleman, you know, because first of all, Nova Scotia is a predominantly white town. The majority, the Black people that are there are either athletes or they live on the outskirts. And in that town, I was called the N-word numerous times before this point, but I just kind of just let it slide. So I approached this gentleman, and I asked him why he said the N-word to the girl. And you know what his reaction was? You know how he responded? He said, "What are you gonna do about it? N-word." Right then and there, I literally blacked out, and I punched him in his face. And then I walked away. The next day, my hand was just like swollen. And I thought, okay, it's just because I hit this guy, it'll go down. Another day passes by, my hand's getting bigger, and it's like, if anybody ever watched The Nutty Professor, if you ever seen the scene when his hand just swells up and gets really big, it was like that. And the thing about it was that every time I would move it, like if I hung my hand low, like the blood would just rush down, and it was so painful. Like I wanted to cry. So I decided to go to the doctor and just to get it examined. And actually, I went to the doctor twice. I went to the doctor initially, and I kind of lied about what happened, but then I went again after it was getting worse, and I told the truth. And the doctor told me, you need to go to the hospital right now. So I go to the hospital, I have to see an orthopedic surgeon, and I find out that I was literally 24 hours away from having my hand amputated. Because the thing is that your mouth is one of the dirtiest places in your body. There's so much bacteria in your mouth. And the thing about bacteria is that bacteria loves warm places. And your knuckle is a warm place. So what had happened was the bacteria was just growing at a speedy rate, that it was just going up my arm. Like my arm was literally like swollen till like around here. Long story short, I ended up having a surgery. They opened my knuckle, removed everything. But the point of the story is that after that, I told myself I would never, ever, ever let anybody control my emotions. I would never give my power away to anybody. Because that, first of all, I don't condone violence, but it was just an array of emotions that had led up to that. You know, so many situations I just let slide, and I just let it out, you know. And that act almost cost me my career. That act almost cost me my football career and the career I'm in right now. The reason why I'm saying that is I almost lost my hand. When I played football, I was a receiver. I had to use these hands to catch. I almost lost it. I almost gave it away because of the N-word. I got charged with assault causing bodily harm. Eventually I beat the charge, but had that charge stuck on, I could never have been a teacher. I could never have been a teacher, all because I decided to give my power away. So long story short, I believe that gentleman used that word frequently because he wasn't educated, you know? So I personally feel that racism is real. Racism is alive more than everybody knows. But at the same time, for us to, and I know, Jesse, you're going to get to this point just now, but for us to bring awareness, for us to help end racism, it starts with each and every one of us educating the youth. The youth are the future. If the youth are not educated with these matters, it's just going to continue and like a repeated cycle. So we need to educate the youth, and we need to get them more aware and more socially aware, more culturally competent, so that they're not using that word and they understand the relevance of that word.
All right, thank you, Kwame. We had a couple of questions that actually came in. Maybe if one of you guys could answer, just for time. I don't want to cut you guys short on anything, but I had a question saying, what was your experience like in university? Jamar, AJ, Nana, do any of you guys want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll start actually. So when I got the opportunity to go to St. Francis Xavier University, a lot of people don't know, but I had to jump on that opportunity because there was just so much happening where I was. And actually Jessie was the one to kind of push me to go, because he saw some of the racist situations that I would get into, actually just going out to a club, and I would make sure that my pants were pulled up to my waist properly, my shirt was tucked in, like everything, and yet I would still get disallowed from the club for no reason, things like that, and it would just escalate to bigger problems, and yeah, it was just tough in general. So there were so much things that happened. Jessie was like, you know what, you should get out of Ottawa, try something new. You have a talent, explore your talent as much as you can and see where you can go. And you know, I was so grateful for that opportunity, because it actually changed my life. A lot of people don't know the things that have gone on. Obviously, now some of you guys are hearing some of the stories, but that's a small fraction of the stories. But yeah, I was playing soccer at university, and we're playing in the Atlantic region, and a lot of players we were playing against were white players, and I had a different style of play. I was, I had a little bit of flair in my game. I had so much passion for the game, and yet when I would play, I was dominating at a time. And then there was the opposition. They would say some of the worst things to me, and I wouldn't understand why these guys were using the word, the N-word towards me, or saying, oh, like, you know what, if you were coming to our school, we'd do this and this and this to you, and all these things. And I didn't care, because like our team was good, we were doing our thing, but I just never experienced so much like racist comments for no reason. And then it actually trickled down to even referees. Like I would challenge a player, like a simple slide tackle, and immediately I would get a yellow card. And then I had players on my team, white players, that were more aggressive than me, that would slide tackle, do the same thing, and then yell in the referee's face. And the referee would condone it and would just be like, okay, yeah, like, it's okay, take it easy, and things like that. And I was like, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me, because if I did that, if we switched places, I would have received my second yellow card just for confronting the referee. And things like that was, like, I noticed that from the first year. There's so many different things that just happen, throughout, not even just university, but it's just not just on the field, what I'm trying to say in university, but there's things that happen in university off the field that still pertain to the game. And it's always like, it's a game within a game. It's never just the joy of the game. And again, it comes down to your character. Maybe we jump for a header and we scream with emotion to win the header. That could be looked at as, oh, they're disrespecting the other team or something. It's always an excuse that someone has to paint a negative picture for us. So there was times where, I'd go back to the dorm, and I would just sit there, and Jessie would be like, you good, or you okay? Because he was my roommate at the time. And I'd be like, nah, I'm just sick of all of this. It's clear racism, and there's legit nothing you could do. If you get physical, you're labeled as you're a bad apple. If you stay quiet, they just continue to abuse you. If you talk to your coach to help you, unfortunately, they can't do much, because it's just the same thing is just going to continue to happen. They might have a word, but maybe 1 day or 2 days it's clear, and after that, it starts right back up again. So it becomes a battle that you have to deal with. And as Nana mentioned earlier, it's mental awareness and mental illness that we're dealing with for all these things. Like it's tough, but again, sometimes you have these situations that even happen with your own teammates, because trainings get heated, and without having proper education of the matter, they'll say things that they don't even mean to say. But in my mind, I would always say, okay, like, even if you meant to say something and it was an accident, you're a racist to me, because you said it. That came out of your mouth. And if I was to say the same thing to you, I'd be labeled as a racist, or it'd be some negative thing towards me, and it would be a big deal. It'd probably be in the newspaper, or something would happen. So I just look at it like the tables should never be, the tables should be reversed, and then you would see how difficult, and see the pressures and the struggle and the mental things that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. It definitely wouldn't feel comfortable for them as well.
For sure.
That's just some of the things.
Even like growing up in sport, you guys have clearly played at a high level. Is there anyone or any particular, I would say, coach or anything like that has helped you guys deal with that a little bit better? That has, I wouldn't say be on your side, but help you get over that hump, and clearly showed that they understood what you might have gone through to get where you are today, or understood at what you might be going through or what you have gone through? Has there been anyone along the journey that you could remember?
You guys want to take it? I can take this one. I have two coaches, and funny enough, one of them is actually in Halifax, Steve Hart. So Steve Hart was my first U17 national team coach, and he was the first. I shouldn't say the first coach, but he was one of the first coaches that made it. And this is going to be hard to say, but it's the truth though. He made it fun to be a black soccer player. You know, like he took away all the double standards. He just made you comfortable. And if he saw you weren't comfortable, he would pull you aside. And he would say things my parents would say to me, Nana, you're a black defender. Let's not kid ourselves. There was an article that came out today in Germany where fans are still making racist comments. This is 2020. And he would pull me aside and say, listen, you're in a sport where black center backs aren't looked at in the best light, right? Just be yourself. And I would say, like I've been saying all day, like Jamar just said, the mental health aspect, Steve helped me he helped me not lose my emotion to racism. It was Steve Hart who did that. And Mark DeSantos, a lot of you guys will probably know him in Vancouver with the Whitecaps. He was another one who, a Portuguese Canadian coach, but he knows what racism is. He doesn't shy away from it. He had tough conversations with me. And as a man, I was a man when I met Mark, but just the conversations helped. If it wasn't for Mark, I would have got a red card and maybe a lot more in the finals in 2017, because he was able to relate to me and calm me down mentally in those moments of weakness.
Wow.
I had it just for time, guys. I'll allow maybe one person to answer these questions as we go. So, I mean, feel free if you want to. So you guys are talking about all the times that's happened. What has gotten you guys through this time? Like, obviously racism is such a big thing and you've had so many experiences with it. What has kept you going? What has caused you to maybe get over that hump? Is there anything along those lines?
Yeah, I can say something quickly. And it's ironic that the initial message that my mom and dad gave me of, you got to work hard. You have to work hard. So like you have to be willing to put in extra work in order to get to where you want to get to. And for me, that has been my whole focus of going to where I want to go to is, AJ, you have to work hard. You have to continue to be positive. You have to continue to, as Kwame said, not let people take away your power and control your emotions. You have to be able to take a step back, right? And look at what the scenario is, what the situation is, and then make a decision of how you want to move forward. So for me, as I got older, I was able to kind of slow things down a bit when it came to certain racial situations. I was able to step back and kind of look at the picture and make a decision for myself of how I want to react, right? Do I want to speak up and say something, or do I want to look the other way and continue onto my path of where I'm going and not let that individual stop me from moving forward? So for me, Jessie, to answer your question, if this does answer your question, it was slowing down the situation, being aware of what's happening, and making a decision of how you want to move forward. And God, man, that's it. And God. So my faith. So that for me is my experience. That's how I move forward and deal with these situations. I don't know if anybody else can.
Just, Kwame, how about, I would like to ask you this, because I know as a teacher, as a motivational speaker, you are even on the finalists for, I mean, what was it? Amazing Race, the Heroes Edition. So you've clearly done a lot. What would you say to the youth today who might be experiencing something like this, or who hasn't experienced it, or even someone who's on the opposite end who might be the ones to interact with some individuals who might be of color or anything along those lines? What would you say to them today?
Good question. I would say that anybody who has been in a situation where they've been racially profiled or they've been judged, don't, how do I put this in a good way? like I said, don't let anybody take your power away, but at the same time, don't let anybody step on you. You know, stand up for yourself, speak up for yourself, educate the person who's speaking to you. Because here's the thing, when we're put in these situations, we're gonna do one of two things. We're either gonna be the person who changes the perception of the racist, or we're gonna be the person who proves that perception right. You know, so you got one of two things. The way I acted, I proved that dude right. I acted in a manner of what he portrayed me as, you know, whereas I could have taken it as an opportunity to take the higher road, to educate this guy, to tell him right from wrong, you know. So I think that's one way I would encourage youth that are facing that situation. But at the same, I would also encourage other people to take the time to get to know people. You know, just because you got a black friend named Kwame from Ghana, West Africa, doesn't mean Jamar from Jamaica is going to be the exact same person. They're going to be two totally different people. Just because we got the same skin color doesn't mean we're the exact same person. There's different types of black people. There's different types of cultures, you know? So take the time to get to know people, because at the end of the day, we're all human. Whether we're black, white, yellow, brown, it doesn't matter. You know, to eliminate racism is simple. Be human, get to know people, you know? So that's what I would say to youth who are dealing with this situation from being a person of color or from being a Caucasian individual.
Thanks for that. And just to conclude tonight, what I want to ask, maybe each of you guys, if you could just give a brief thing on that. What would you say to our audience today of ways that maybe they could help in some way? Because I think one question that a lot of people have is, hey, I'm with you, I'm reposting, I'm protesting, and I'm trying to help and I'm trying to be more aware, but what else can I do? What can I do to help this situation? A lot of people have that question. Is there anything you guys would say?
Well, I'll say this. Kwame mentioned it earlier, and it starts with the youth. We have to help these youth and educate these youth, because, like Kwame said, they are the future. So we need to try to figure out a way to implement, or someone who's on this call, if you guys have some sort of power to say, you know what, let's talk to a school board. Let's talk to the educational system or for the elementary system. Elementary system. Let's see who can help out in the high school system. Let's see who can help out in the university system, where we can have programs or a course or something to at least start implementing some change. Because at the end of the day, you're just educating yourself and passing the information on to other people. Us as Black people, we've had to educate ourselves on how to protect ourselves, how to be aware of certain situations. You know, we shouldn't have to look over our shoulders all the time. We shouldn't have to behave a certain way because that's the proper way that a Caucasian person will look at us, and they'll treat us better because we're acting a certain manner. You know, and that comes from education. Again, if you understand people, you know, you have less issues. So the people on this call, I would say, you know, instead of saying, oh yeah, I have a Black friend, there's no need to say you have a Black friend. You have a friend, you know, and you go from there. You know, yeah, my friend is this, he's from here or she's from here, and this is what they mean to me. Fine. We don't have to always categorize everything. That's also a problem. So with what Kwame said is about understanding people and things like that, that's where it starts. And especially on the Black issue, you know, we need people to be more conscious of their actions and continue to educate the youth on these matters. Because now that it's in your face and you're seeing it all over the news and things like that, kids will have questions. And they might not ask the questions, but parents, you guys might have to step in and tell these kids well, this is what's going on in the world. This is what not to be like. This is what you should try to be like. This is what you need to be like. Something like that. At least give them guidance and steer them in the right direction.
That's a great response, Jamar. I'd answer it like this. I had a conversation. I'm 31, and I had to sit down with a therapist just to talk about my feelings. Because like I said earlier in the call, I've been so used to suppressing my emotions. And I recently, at 31, realized that that's not the way to go. So the way I would answer that question is, and I understand it will get uncomfortable. It won't be easy to have these conversations with anyone, not even just Black people, but we're not asking, the Black community, we're not asking for sympathy. We don't need sympathy. We're asking that you just listen to understand. And I feel like in today's society, people listen to respond. You know, like, for example, you know, protesters are saying Black Lives Matter and people want to make it all lives matter. I'm sure everyone has seen it. We're not saying all lives don't matter. We're just saying right now, Black lives are in danger. But if you were to listen to the meaning of what we're saying, it'll be easier for you to understand what it is we're trying to get you guys to understand. So if you guys could just listen, it could be a 17-year-old just calling your friends and just listen to what they have to say. Because I can guarantee you, if you listen to truly understand, your whole world will change. Like I said, we're not asking for sympathy. We don't need sympathy. We just want you guys to listen to understand. Like, listen, it's not normal to go to the grocery store and have to check your shoulders because you don't know what people are. That's not normal. You know, just listen to what we're trying to explain to you guys. Because if you can understand us, that's the first step in making this world a better place. So that's how I would answer that question.
No, I agree, man. I agree. I think listening to what we're saying and listening to how we feel and just understanding, right? But I also think that those on the call, I think it begins in the home, in your home, in your circle. Get an understanding of Black history, get an understanding of the culture, get an understanding of where these feelings and where these emotions are coming from within our culture, where they started, where they begun, and where we are now, right? We're in 2020 and we're still having these conversations. You know what I mean? We're still having these conversations. I'm a young Black man, I'm 32, and we're still sitting here and having this conversation. So I didn't think I would be having this conversation as a 32-year-old man growing up. I'm pretty sure my parents didn't think their teachings and certain things they told me, I would still be having this conversation. I'm bringing a child into the world very soon, a young boy. So I think it starts within the home and understanding the culture within the home. If you have any Black friends, speak to them. Ask them questions, get to know them, get to know where they're from, get to know how they think and how they feel, right? So that's where I think you guys would be able to help. Just start in your home. Start in your home. Start with your kids. Start with a friend, a relative. Doesn't matter. Just start in your home and open up your minds and yourself to understanding the feeling and understanding what is going on in the world right now.
Kwame, anything to add to that?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
I would say we all everybody needs to address their biases. You know, the thing about biases is that having a bias is totally normal. You know, and it's in our human nature. It's in our primitive nature. That's what we use as human beings in our fight or flight, you know, to distinguish right from wrong, to distinguish predator from prey, you know. And the great thing about us as human beings is that we're also able to decipher what is true and what is not true, you know, through experience, you know. So I would say to address our unconscious biases, you know, we all have it, you know. If you think a certain way when picture of a group of black men, or if you're walking down the street, you see a group of black teenagers and you feel threatened. If you see a picture of, I don't know, let's say an Indian man with a turban, and you would naturally assume that he's a certain way, that's a bias, you know? So do your research, get to know people, as I previously said. But as what everybody else has said on this panel also, education is the biggest thing. Black history needs to be more than just a day. It needs to be more than just a presentation that you call some random black guy or black lady and tell them to dress in their African attire or their West Caribbean attire, and just to kind of show them off. No, black history needs to be in the curriculum. Children understand and know about the effects of slavery, you know? So I think it's more than about just a one-day thing. Having it in the curriculum gets the youth more aware, because awareness is the key. If somebody's not aware of the differences in the world, then when they do see the differences, they are gonna have that biased opinion. They are gonna maybe say something incorrect. For instance, when I was a kid, I was gonna say this earlier on, but somebody asked me if my skin tastes like chocolate. Who asked that? That's somebody that hasn't been educated. Somebody who's never met a black person. But if we involve that into the curriculum, racism will decrease. I think there's a lot more other than that. Like, I believe in economics, and also, you know, people having power and land and whatnot, but that's a whole nother conversation. But in terms of what each of us can do, I think addressing our biases is key, and education.
Nana, is there something you'd like to say as well?
Yeah, I know we're about to hop off, but I just want to thank everyone for being on this call, because to us black men, you guys are part of the solution. You guys are the reason why I feel for the first time in 31 years, we actually have hope, right? So the fact that you guys are here and you've listened to our stories, and I'm looking at your faces right now and I can see you're all interested in what we're saying. So I just want to say thank you, because like, as a black man who's living in America, I'm in it. What you guys are seeing on the news, I live every day, right? So the fact that you've been on this call for over an hour, listening to our stories and looking as attentive as you are, that for me, that gets me emotional. And anyone who knows me knows I'm not a super emotional guy, right? So I just want to say thank you guys for taking the time and willing to learn. You're part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you guys for coming on the call. Everyone who came on, Nana, AJ, Kwame, Jamar, we thank you so much for your voices that you gave us today, the education, your stories. We really do appreciate that. At Suburban FC, we're here and we're trying to build a culture unlike any other, to be honest with you. And I think as we're building culture, this is key. It's about soccer, but as soccer players, we're people first. And if this is such a major issue in our world today, we need to talk about it. And I thank you for coming on and actually helping us with that. Our president here is actually saying thank you to everyone. So we just want to thank you. And from Suburban FC and from myself personally, thank you so much for just hopping on and showing your courage, guys. I know it wasn't easy. Trust me, I know it's not easy to talk about, but that's one of the first steps of actually healing and just listening. And for some of you guys, you know, it sounds that you're in that step and you're in that process and you've been healed from this whole racism thing. So for everyone today, if I could leave you with one thing, and it's something for me that I've been just trying to practice it and put it into action. And it goes back to the word love. And I want to say it because I've been trying to read up a little bit more on racism, and you hear people like Martin Luther King, Bob Marley, all these folks. And one thing that they preach is love, a human race love, like loving other people. And it's not just a word. And you think to yourself, how can I do that better? And I think in this day and age, we have to be intentional about what we do. We have to be intentional about what we do. And even yesterday at the grocery store, I had two experiences. I had one person who, I was trying to go by and I was trying to be extra nice. I'm like, hey, excuse me. And they just turned away. And then there was another guy who was waiting for me. Hey, go ahead. And I felt it. I felt it to the point where, just seeing the smile on the guy's face, it made me feel so welcome. And that feeling of feeling loved by someone, I guess you could say, changes a whole lot in you. So for everyone on the call, what can I do to be better? Educate yourself for sure, but be intentional intentional about loving someone, even if it's through a kind act. Try to do a kind act daily or weekly. Take note of it, and then maybe it becomes a habit. So, I mean, that's what I would leave you guys with, because any change, it starts with love, because that's the deepest thing that you could get to. We're human beings. All right. Once again, thank you so much for coming on, guys, and thank you to the audience for listening, and even the questions. If I didn't answer your question, I apologize. Just we're short on some time. Thank you once again, and have a good night, everyone.